Most people think poverty comes from bad luck, but the truth is much darker. Your daily habits are silently draining your future without you even realizing it. And the worst part? Most of these habits feel completely normal. They look harmless. Scrolling your phone, buying small things, avoiding discomfort, seeking entertainment. But over time, these invisible habits slowly destroy focus, discipline, and financial freedom. And if you never identify them, they can quietly keep you poor for the rest of your life. The first invisible habit draining your wealth is constant distraction. Modern society profits from your lack of focus. Every app, every notification, every social platform is competing for your attention every second of the day. Because attention became the most valuable currency on earth. And the more distracted people become, the easier they are to control. Think about how many people wake up and immediately grab their phones. Before thinking, before planning, before creating, they consume endless scrolling, short videos, entertainment, drama, hour after hour. Most people no longer control their attention. Algoritmos do. And this creates a dangerous effect most people never notice. Distraction destroys momentum. The problem is not only wasted time. The real problem is fragmented focus. Because success requires depth. Depth of thinking, depth of work, depth of discipline. But modern habits train the brain for stimulation instead of focus. Fast dopamina, fast entertainment, fast distraction. And over time, people lose the ability to concentrate deeply on anything meaningful. That destroys productivity. That destroys ambition. And eventually, that destroys financial growth. Because wealth is usually built by people who can focus longer than everyone else. Successful people understand something most people ignore. Attention shapes reality. Where focus goes, results follow. That is why distracted people often feel mentally exhausted even when they accomplished very little. Their minds are constantly overloaded with noise, notifications, messages, videos, advertisements, opinions. Modern life became a non-stop battle for attention, and most people are losing that battle every single day. The second invisible habit is emotional spending. This one quietly destroys millions of lives. Most purchases are emotional, not logical. People buy things because they feel stressed, lonely, bored, insecure. Modern marketing understands human psychology perfectly. That's why companies do not sell products anymore. They sell emotions, status, validation, comfort, escape, and millions of people fall into this trap every single day. Buying things they do not need to feel temporary relief. But emotional spending creates long-term pain, debt, stress, anxiety, dependence. And the dangerous part is that small emotional purchases feel harmless. Coffee, delivery apps, subscriptions, impulse shopping. Individually, they seem small, but repeated daily for years, they quietly drain financial freedom. Most people never realize how much money disappears through unconscious spending. That is why awareness matters, because you cannot control what you refuse to notice. And poor financial habits usually begin unconsciously, not dramatically, quietly, slowly, repeated daily until they become identity. The third invisible habit is living for appearances. This habit became extremely common because of social media. People no longer buy things for utility. They buy things for perception, to look successful, to look wealthy, to look important. And this creates a dangerous cycle. People sacrifice long-term freedom for short-term validation. Expensive cars, luxury clothes, designer brands, all purchased to impress strangers who honestly do not care. And social media amplifies this constantly. Fake lifestyles create fake expectations. People compare their reality to carefully edited illusions online, and that comparison quietly creates insecurity. Then insecurity creates spending, and spending creates financial weakness. That is how the cycle continues. Most people are not building wealth. They are performing wealth. And there is a massive difference between the two. Real wealthy people often look financially boring because they prioritize assets over appearances, freedom over validation, control over attention. But modern culture teaches the opposite. Consume more, show more, flex more. And people trapped in that mindset usually stay financially stuck for decades. That is how invisible habits quietly destroy the future. Not instantly, but slowly enough that most people never notice until years have already disappeared. The fourth invisible habit draining your wealth is avoiding discomfort. This habit destroys more potential than almost anything else. Because growth requires discomfort. Learning new skills feels uncomfortable. Starting a business feels uncomfortable. Investing feels uncomfortable. Discipline feels uncomfortable. In modern society, train people to avoid discomfort at all costs. Entertainment is always available. Distraction is always available. Comfort is always available. So instead of facing difficult challenges, most people escape into stimulation, scrolling, watching, consuming, complaining. And over time, avoidance becomes identity. People begin convincing themselves they are stuck, that success is impossible, that wealthy people are simply lucky. But the truth is simpler. Most people avoid the uncomfortable actions that create transformation. They avoid risk. They avoid discipline. They avoid responsibility. And responsibility changes everything. The moment someone takes ownership of their habits, their future begins to change. Not instantly, but permanently. Because now they stop reacting emotionally and begin thinking strategically. And strategy creates freedom. The fifth invisible habit is lack of long-term thinking. Most people are trapped in short-term survival mode. Immediate pleasure over future rewards. Temporary comfort over permanent progress. And that mindset quietly destroys wealth creation. Because wealth is usually invisible in the beginning. Investing feels slow. Learning feels slow. Building skills feels slow. But consistency compounds over time. That is what most people fail to understand. Small actions repeated daily eventually create massive outcomes. But modern culture destroyed patience. People want instant money, instant success, instant transformation. And when results do not happen quickly, they quit. That is why discipline is more valuable than motivation. Motivation changes daily. Discipline continues regardless of emotion. And financially successful people understand this deeply. They build systems instead of relying on feelings. Because feelings are temporary. Systems create permanence. That is why wealthy people automate positive habits whenever possible. Automatic investing, automatic saving, structured routines. The less emotional decisions become, the stronger financial outcomes usually become. But most people continue living reactively, reacting to emotions, reacting to trends, reacting to distractions. And reactive living creates financial instability. Because unstable habits create unstable results. That is why awareness matters so much. Once someone identifies invisible habits, they finally gain the power to change them. And awareness is where transformation begins. But there's another hidden trap most people ignore completely. The addiction to comfort. Modern society made comfort incredibly accessible. Food delivered instantly. Entertainment available endlessly. Pleasure available constantly. And while comfort itself is not evil, addiction to comfort quietly destroys ambition. Because ambitious people understand something important. Growth usually feels difficult before it feels rewarding. The gym feels painful before results appear. Learning feels frustrating before confidence appears. Building wealth feels slow before freedom appears. And most people quit during the uncomfortable phase. Not because success is impossible, but because discomfort feels unfamiliar. That is why mentally strong people separate themselves financially over time. They act despite discomfort. They continue despite uncertainty. They stay disciplined despite emotion. Meanwhile, most people continue seeking escape. More entertainment, more distraction, more stimulation. And stimulation slowly weakens focus. Weak focus weakens discipline. Weak discipline weakens financial outcomes. That cycle repeats every single day in modern society. And most people never recognize it happening. They think their problem is income, but often the deeper problem is behavior. Because behavior creates results, and repeated behavior eventually creates identity. That is why changing your life always begins by changing your habits first. Not perfectly, consistently, one decision at a time, one disciplined action at a time. That is how real transformation actually happens. Escaping these invisible habits is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming conscious. Most people live on autopilot. Wake up, react emotionally, consume distractions, repeat. But financially successful people live intentionally. They protect focus. They protect time. They protect attention because they understand that attention shapes reality. Where focus goes, results follow. That is why the first step toward financial freedom is controlling your environment. Reduce distractions. Reduce noise. Reduce unnecessary stimulation. Because clarity creates better decisions. The next step is building awareness around spending. Track every dollar, not to become obsessed with money, but to understand behavior. Because spending reveals psychology, and psychology controls financial outcomes. Then focus on building valuable skills. Communication, sales, business, technology, content creation. Skills create leverage, and leverage changes lives. One valuable skill can completely transform someone's future financially. But consistency matters more than intensity. Small improvements repeated daily eventually separate successful people from average people. And finally, think long-term. Stop chasing fast success. Real wealth usually grows slowly before it becomes visible suddenly. That is the part social media never shows. The years of discipline, the years of sacrifice, the years of invisible work. People only see the reward, but freedom is built quietly, patiently, strategically. And the people who eventually win financially are usually the ones who master themselves first. Because the real battle was never only about money. It was always about behavior. Your habits create your future. Your focus creates your direction. And your daily decisions quietly shape the rest of your life. Most people will hear this and continue living exactly the same way. But a small percentage of people will apply it. And those people will eventually separate themselves from everyone else. Because wealth belongs to people who learn how to control themselves. Not perfectly, consistently. But here is something most people fail to realize. Financial freedom is not only about making more money. It is about needing less validation, less distraction, less emotional escape. Because many people spend their entire lives chasing things they do not actually need. A more expensive car, a bigger house, more status, more approval. And during that endless chase, they sacrifice peace. They sacrifice time. They sacrifice freedom. Wealthy people often think differently. They understand that freedom matters more than appearance. That ownership matters more than attention. That control matters more than image. And this changes how they live completely. They think before spending. They think before reacting emotionally. They think long-term while everyone else thinks short-term. That is why wealth usually looks boring in the beginning. Quiet investing, quiet discipline, quiet consistency. Meanwhile, social media promotes noise, luxury, attention, flexing, consumption, and millions of people become trapped trying to imitate lifestyles they cannot afford. That is why awareness is so powerful. The moment you recognize these invisible habits, you gain the ability to change direction. You stop operating unconsciously. You stop sabotaging yourself emotionally. And slowly, your future begins to change. Not because of luck, but because of discipline. Because your habits quietly shape your financial destiny every single day. And the people who eventually become free are usually not the smartest people in the room. They're simply the people who stayed disciplined longer than everyone else. That is the real difference. Not talent, not luck, consistency. Subscribe for more.